Well, hello there, humans of his earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough indeed to be doing it to. I'm Bushka on Blitz, welcome back to channel. If this is your first time here, which I don't know how you missed me, I've been dropping enough videos. This is a chat about update 4.9. It's a pretty big update, in fact. It's got a lot of new content and it's got a lot of interesting things that are coming to the game. And I want to talk about that in general. I want to talk about some of the balance stuff that I've been raving about for ages, which apparently Wargaming kind of agrees with, namely the 121 and some of the stuff that's been missed. There's a lot to cover off, and I don't want to muck around too much. I'm currently in New York, and I am absolutely 100% pressed for time. I am sneaking off in between little bits of sightseeing. We just did a morning in the Strand bookshop where I got a 1983 hardcover copy of the Terry Pratchett book, the first book in that series, The Colour of Magic, and I had this stub from someone on a Piedmont railway or airline ticket. It was very, very authentic. It was lovely to get, and I was lucky enough also, my missus bought me for my birthday a copy of Shea Serrano's book, Important Questions in Basketball. It's not the name of the book, but that's what it's all about. It's very, very cool. You might remember him from Finding Darko if you're an NBA fan. But anyway, I digress. New York's a bit like that. It drags you all over the place. There's so much going on, so many loony people, so much crazy stuff, and it's a whole lot of fun. Patch 4.9 is also a whole lot of fun, and I'm going to have a chat to you about a couple of the things that are pretty basic. One of them being the ammo capacity, that a lot of tanks picked up ammo capacity, which is fair enough. Some of them needed it. Some of them was just kind of odd, like the 50B going from 56 to 57 shells. And yet the Bat Chat has not had an increase in ammo capacity, which is just nuts. But they managed to squeeze in an extra 3 shells for the Death Star, because that thing shifts units. I can't think of any other reason that they would have such amazing amounts of... that's a big buff for the Death Star. One of the problems you have with the Death Star is actually the paucity of shells, and the fact that it's hard to balance out that premium hesh with normal hesh if you don't want to lose a whole lot of money, or standard AP, and that's no longer an issue because you get an extra 3 shots. So there you go. And they're kind of odd shots. I mean, you get more shells than the Stridsvagen, Stevie, and the Walker Bulldog, and the Predator goes from 100 to 102 shells. Like, I mean, they're kind of quality of life things, which I think are kind of silly. It's nice to see the Stura ML get another 3 shells. But what I was really interested in was, in terms of balance, was the 121. Now, I've been rabbiting on for ages about how crap the 121 is as a tier 10 medium. And Wargaming seems to have agreed with me. They've basically given it like a 20% buff to its DPM, which is amazing. And they've also managed to throw in there not just a 20% buff to the DPM, but a 20% buff to gun depression, which is massive, like absolutely massive. It's not made it a OP monster, but my issue with the gun and with the tank, and it was also always, it gave up good penetration and gun depression and DPM for a gun that basically, you know, had 400 alpha, and that's not particularly important. And yet they've now moved it up the chart so that it will be a little bit more competitive, and it may actually be able to get over 3,000 DPM if you run all the bells and whistles on it. And I think that's cool, because it should make it into a tank that is now, it's a tank I would think would benefit tremendously. Like, what tank wouldn't benefit tremendously from doing 20% more damage per minute? I mean, it's just stone the crows. It was screaming out for it. But to give it a whole degree of gun depression as well is pretty crazy. Absolutely crazy. But, you know, it needed something. It was just crap. I had people tell me I was wrong about that, but there you go. The other interesting one I found was the T110E3. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but I recently did a video called The Worst Tank in Tier 10, and Wargaming decided that was a bit silly because they wanted to make it as redundant as possible, as quickly as possible. So like the next patch, they've completely buffed the T110E3, which is just a bastard of a thing to do to a man like myself who puts a lot of effort into these videos. And this is easily the biggest winner from the patch. Like the 121 and the T110E3 were the 2 tanks that I had rated second, and it was like the penultimate worst tank and then the ultimate worst tank. And the E3 has had a massive buff. One of the ones that is really not talked about enough is the traverse on the gun. So basically, if you're looking at a gun, the E3's gun, and we'll have a squiz at that here. We go. If you're looking at the traverse on the gun, you're looking at the distance it can traverse from left to right. Now, it's probably easy to show you this in the actual armor inspector here. And it's not a stat that's talked about enough for non-turreted TDs. And the reason it's not talked about a whole lot is because it's kind of it's a pretty random thing. Like, people don't realize that it's so important in the game. You're looking at the amount you can traverse the gun from left to right. Okay, seems pretty straightforward. The reason it's important is if you can't see a target and you have to traverse the gun any further than that, it will move the tracks of the tank. And that means that you break the camouflage that you get when you're stationary. It's one of the big issues for a non-turreted TD. It's why a Death Star can sit at the back with its 180 degrees of traverse and not break camo. And that's pretty important if you're driving one of these non-turreted TDs. The other thing that's really important about it is if you can traverse far enough, you can get your angles on your tank up to a really ridiculous amount. And the best example I have of this is if we have a look at the Tier 9 Tortoise, the British TD. Have a look at the Tort. The Tort can get a lot of traverse on its gun, like a massive amount of traverse. And that allows it to post up on a corner. And you can see the difference. If you can angle your gun, and the shooter is not actually a Cent Mark 1, let's make it like a Tier 8. So if you're angling your gun against a Tier 8, if you're flat on, they can pen. If you can post up like this on a corner and get the gun pointing at them from that direction, those angles really, really increase, and it makes your tank a lot harder to actually pen, which is cool. So the T110E3 picking up a bunch of traverse in the gun is a lot more important than people tend to realize. And I love little things like that. They really do make a massive difference in the tank. So it's picked up 33% more traverse on either side of the gun, from 8 to 12 degrees. The other massive thing is obviously getting another 3 degrees or 2 degrees of traverse on your tracks. That's important because it struggled with that. It was the worst traversing Tier 10 tank, basically. Dispersion on the move and hull traverse was decreased, and that was massive. This is pretty funny because I'd covered all this off in the worst Tier 10 tank video, and these are all the things that I said were crap about the tank, and they've just taken every one of them and gone, tick, sucks to be you, Bushka. That video that you took so long to make and thought so hard about is absolutely 100% redundant, and you're going to have to go and make another one. But that's cool, like, because the tank needed a buff. It's gone from 24 kilometers an hour to 35 kilometers an hour. That's massive. It's so massive. It means that you can now keep up when the heavies start rolling out. And this was a tank that could so easily be caught behind and had no side armor and no rear armor, in fact, and could be HE penned and Hesh penned by Death Stars. And that was really, really important. And it was a really, really bad thing for the game, for this tank anyway. So your maximum forward speed went up to 35 kilometers an hour. That's over 33% in terms of an increase. Like, that's a massive, massive number. 11 kilometers an hour. It's like 45% more speed. More speed is good. And you got 2 kilometers an hour in reverse, which sounds like not much, but when you were at 8 kilometers an hour originally, it's really, really important because getting reversing up, and this is where this is where this comes into it. Like, if you're reversing up at 8 kilometers an hour or 10 kilometers an hour and you're going from side to side and you're still able to target because you've got more gun traverse, so you can get this really obtuse angle, and you can turn it into a tank that, you know, that kind of angle there as you're reversing and still being able to get shots off. And because they've decreased the dispersion on the tank. This is Christmas, Easter, Hanukkah, Festivus for the rest of us. Everything rolled into one for the T110E3. And I've got to say, it is so long overdue, and it is a tank that has just been crying out for a buff like this forever. And they've got round to it, and it's massive. I don't know if you've watched my worst Tier 10 tank video, but I have 1,000 battles in the T110E3. 1,000. That's a lot. And you might ask why, and I'd say because I'm a glutton for punishment. But back in the day, it was a different kettle of fish. It worked. The other big things, the 4202 and the Mark 1, Mark 7 and 1 got massive buffs. Absolutely tremendous buffs. Before I go any further, I want to recommend for you guys something that's, I think, is a really, really important thing. There's some great websites out there. I use Blitz Stars, the tank compare on Blitz Stars extensively. I use this website, this app here, Armor Inspector, obviously extensively. And the other thing that you might want to start looking at, which is really, really important, is a website called Blitz Hangar. Now, Blitz Hangar is something that I should have mentioned a long time ago, okay? But they go through the updates like just incredibly. It's incredibly well done. And you can see here, it goes through the armor profiles and the updates. You can see it looks amazing. And you can see exactly what you're getting into. 3D models and all this stuff. And the other thing that's included on here is the stuff that doesn't always get included in the patch. What do I mean by that? Well, let's have a look. You've got the MBT-70, the Tier 9 German premium heavy tank, the Borsig, the Ferd, the T69, all that stuff is in there. But in Blitz Hangar, you'll also see all the stuff that's not listed on tanks that aren't even really in the game or haven't been talked about. They pop up as well, like the new French premiums. They get data mined on here. You've got the Lorraine and stuff, and you can see their stats get popped up there as well. The AMX M449, these kind of things, they all pop, and that's pretty cool. So if you're looking for somewhere to waste more of your day on World of Tanks Blitz, this and and compare tanks over here on Blitz Stars, we can also check out all your stats. They're absolute musts, and they're things that I spend a lot of time mucking around with. So there you go. That's hat tip if you're not doing those already, and you probably are, because if you're like me, you're an absolute Blitz addict. So the Centurion 701 and the 4202 got buffs to their reloads, which is hilarious because we've now come full circle back to the point where these tanks are now basically as they were back in the day when Bushka used to carry on like a pork chop about how good they were. And they've got DPM buffs. They've had their Hesh guns returned. We're basically back to how they were originally. They have to be the biggest headaches in the game for wargaming, the 4202 and the and the Centurion 7 and 1. They are very hard to balance because good players, or players who are experienced at least, like I am, have been playing with these tanks forever, and they are very, very fluent with switching between Hesh and APCR. And that means that you can maximize your abilities to have those big peekaboo moments, which 440 alpha worth of Hesh. And when you've got a tank that can fire 9.38 rounds a minute when fully buffed, and you've got a gun that can do 210mm Hesh at 440 alpha, and you know where to hit it, you can run into tanks that you can pump out, 3,800 DPM very, very comfortably as a peekaboom 10-degree gun depression tank. And that, boys and girls, is very, very scary. Of course, that doesn't happen with everyone, and it's not a thing that you can rely on, but, if you want to play a high ceiling, low floor tank, step up to the 4201 and the Cent 701 and learn your stuff, and you'll go home an absolute happy days winner. Some other things that I wanted to mention here, the Ferdinand, they're still screwing around with that one. The reload time popped down about a second. The Type 69, the T69, sorry, the Tier 8 American autoloader that has had more touches than Lionel Messi. They have taken that one down again. The reload time on the 90mm gun has dropped by about 1.9 seconds, and on the 76mm gun by about 2 seconds, or 1.9 seconds again, 1.92 seconds. And that's a lot. That's, again, these are numbers that sound rather fair to middling, but they're little bits of balance that keep adding up, and eventually you're looking at a tank that is competitive. And that's good, because they need to be competitive. I actually, dirty little secret, I drove the T69 a lot in calibration on NA for ratings and did very, very well in it. It went exceptionally well running an autoloader over there against some of the, particularly an 8-degree gun depression autoloader, against some of the big slow gun handling wise Russian heavies like the IS-5 and the IS-3 Defender and stuff. I was able to farm a lot of people, which was good fun. Some other things that you may not know about that have popped up. If we have a look at the Blitz Hangar there for 4.9, apart from the Chinese heavies, which I'll get to in just a second, you can see all the updated parameters there for the 69, and it shows you the guns and the E3. Look at all the green stuff for the E3, you know, your dispersion factors, your aiming arc, your speed, your traverse speeds, all that kind of stuff. It's just pretty crackers. It's really, really good. Where is this? The grill, yeah, it got an aim time buff, which was probably quite needed. The WZ121 got big buffs, obviously the 121B. The AMX30B is listed on there as getting a big pump down in the DPM stakes. Now, that's still not released, and I can't discuss the tank, the particulars of the tank, in terms of NDA stuff, because it's obviously not in the game and not released yet. But you can see on Blitz Hangar, they have all the data mining for this stuff, and it pops up here. And so if you want to have a look at those numbers there, you will see that Wargaming is still balancing that tank in the game backwards and forwards, and then the rest of it is all just bits and pieces. I want to talk now about the Chinese heavies. One of the things that's been really disappointing for me with the Chinese mediums, which is finally getting remedied, obviously, like the 121 coming up to the plate, is they gave up so much. Now, I'm doing a review at the moment on the WZ120, and this tank sucks. 3 degrees of gun depression, horrific penetration, worst in tier DPM. You know, it doesn't have a lot going for it. And they've taken that, which is, I mean, it's got 3 degrees of gun depression, which is absolutely god-awful, as bad as you're going to get. And they've taken that same kind of stand with the 121 at tier 10, and they've remedied it, which I think is grand, okay? And don't get me wrong, I'm really happy that they have done that. But at the same time, they haven't touched the WZ120. So if you were not really happy with the 121 as a concept, and you really love the T-34 and 1, which I think is a brilliant tank, but then I'm not happy with the other 3, the top of the tree tier mediums, this has given you a separate reason to grind down that Chinese line. My issue with the Chinese tanks is like the IS-2 is just basically an inferior version of the IS-2, but with different stats and things. But then you get to the WZ-110, and you end up with the WZ-113, which is like a strong turreted, good DPM heavy tank with fairly good straight line speed and crappy frontal and side armor. And that's interesting to me. And it's only 2,000 hit points, but you know, you've got a really interesting gun. This 122mm 60-122 TA gun, 7.19 rounds a minute, 255mm of pen. You've got heat as well, which is, you know, that benefits tremendously from calibrated shells. So if you run calibrated shells with that, you're going to pop another 10% onto it, or whatever that is. You're going to run out, let's have a look. If you run that with calibrated shells, Bushka, you clown, you've been running around all day, you're quite tired. Yeah, you're going to be running it at 369, which is 370mm of pen on a tank that's still going to be able to pump out about just under 3,000 DPM. As a heavy with a strong turret, it becomes quite an interesting proposition. I find it to be a very interesting line. And the T910, the WZ1111-4, I mean, that's like a T9 IS-3, which I again find to be a very interesting thing, but it's got a tier 10 gun, a 130mm gun, which is going to give you 460 alpha. So you're basically looking at the same kind of gun as you've got on an E75 or a VK4502B. All these things make the Chinese line a little bit meatier, with a little bit more to offer. If you want to get your T-34 and 1, you can. And then if you don't like the looks of like the WZ-120, or you want to wait to grind that line until they start buffing it, then you can pop back down, go through the IS-2, the WZ-110, the WZ-1111-14, and then the 113 in the end. And I know a lot of people drove, and I drove on Super Test, the 113, and people weren't particularly keen on it. Some of them, I know a couple of people had really good games in it, and some people really, really loved it, and most of the Super Testers like weren't mad keen on it. But I didn't mind it. I actually didn't mind it. I quite liked the 113 because it is a little bit different, and I think it's the ethos that they're trying stuff with the 121 that didn't really work, and they're going to buff that up. But this is straight out of the bat a different tank. It's a tank that doesn't really exist within the game at the present. For me, that's a lot of fun. I just want to, before I go any further, have a quick chat about, there's been a couple of crazy new crew skills added in. You might note in this patch, we've got the fast capture crew skill. Now, I find this fascinating because it's gonna make the tournament scene quite interesting. If you can get light tanks and run 2 bat chats, you get a big buff to the ability of the tank to capture the base, because it captures it a lot quicker. Indeed, if you can get 2 of them in there at the same time, it increases the skill, it increases the amount of capture speed by 10%, and then you can get it up to 7% running a tier 10 light. So you can get 17% faster cap speed, which is crackers. Hey, it's pretty cool. That's right in line with the new crew skill that we saw last patch, the precision fire, where you end up with a 1 in 3 chance, basically, if you get up after hitting 3 shots in a row, to have a max roll, which really benefits some of these high alpha guns like the Chinese mediums. They're all pretty cool. Fast capture, though, is one that I think is going to be massively influential in tournaments and have a big impact on the makeup of tournaments, and possibly be a way of wargaming to drag some of the heavy-based tournament play you've seen going on into a more mobile, light tank-based tournament playstyle, which I think is going to be very cool. And there's new camos and things. I mean, yeah, you get new camos and stuff, which is pretty cool. We all love new shiny stuff, and God knows we can't get enough of it. And there's been a few glitches and bugs worked out, but all that stuff's very standard, and I'll be covering that off in greater detail as I start using those crew skills in battles, and we start talking about more specific tournament related gear. I'm going to be reviewing all these tanks fairly shortly. The heavies, when I get home, will be driven exclusively, and the new 121. I'm going to be doing a WZ120 video before I leave New York. I think if I can get that done, that would be grand. If not, then, you know, Bob's your mother's brother. We're going to come good anyway. I've enjoyed New York tremendously, but I'm really looking forward to getting back and getting to work and talking to you humans. I've missed a lot of you, and I'm used to that constant interaction and that yelling and screaming and ranting and raving that goes on between me and some of my mates online. So it'll be good to take off the Family Guy blinkers and put the loose cannon pants back on, if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope that was good. I hope that answered some of the questions that you have regarding patch 4.9. Opened your eyes up to some of the stuff you should be popping along to, like Blitz Hangar and Blitz Stars. And yeah, if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll happily have a look at them and answer them if I get a chance. We're out to dinner tonight with my big boy, Tom, and his mum, who's in New York at the moment, her new baby, and some friends and family and all that. So it's been an action-packed week, really. We've done a whole lot of stuff, been all over the island on ferries, and the girls had us running around in a supremely well-coordinated family sightseeing holiday in the Big Apple, and I've had a great time. But I'm looking forward to seeing you all back in the saddle before too long. Look after yourselves, guys. Really appreciate the continued support, and stay safe on the battlefield.